Hey everybody, and welcome back to the road to Avengers Doomsday, and today's movie is Blade Trinity. This was a little bit of a, I don't want to say a weird one going into, but definitely I had weird expectations on this one, predominantly because I had only ever seen clips of Blade 1, clips of Blade 2, and probably clips of Blade 3 in over the time I'd seen on YouTube and stuff, like little snippets of it, but I'd never actually seen any of the movies. But having watched Blade 1 and Blade 2, I felt like the Blade movies kind of got into a groove with Blade 2. They stripped out the meaningless talking scenes or kind of trying to delve more into Blade's character, and they kind of just said, here's a movie where it's Blade, here's some vampires, here's some creepy new vampires or virus thing, and it's a simple story. It's not meant to have twists or turns. It's just a creepy gore fest where Blade does his Blade thing. So I wasn't really sure where they were going to go for a third movie, because the Blade movies haven't exactly set up a trilogy of stories. You can jump into, even this one you can jump into and pretty much have no knowledge of the past two films, because there's zero attempt to try and have a connected story. You don't have to see one to understand two, to understand three. Like I said, you can jump into any of them. And the second movie kind of ended again with a sort of open-ended ending where Blade was off, back killing vampires, which is what he does. And so I wasn't really sure about why this was such a big deal. And then I read the plot description, which hinted that it was the end of the Trinity. It's over, the last Blade movie. Okay. We weren't really building to a finale like that, but okay, whatever. And one of the things that caught my eye in the description of the blurb on the renting thing on the iTunes store was that Dracula was going to be in the movie, and I thought, oh wow. And I actually didn't know that. As I mentioned in the other notes, I kept talking about how I guess they were avoiding Dracula because I wouldn't say it's complicated to use him. I guess it's just a little bit overdone, and this movie kind of makes it more apparent as to why they were hesitant to probably use Dracula through several instances in the film. But when I heard that, I was like, okay, this could be kind of interesting. I mean, the big bad from, the comics is finally going to be used, since we haven't seen that since the first movie. Dracula's kind of like the OG vampire of all things. So this could be a really cool movie, especially after the last movie did the thing with the mutant strain thing. So maybe Dracula's really cool and he looks cool and stuff. And I got to say that despite liking the first Blade movie somewhat and really liking Blade 2 probably more than I should, just because of the cool action scenes and the simplicity of it all, I was very, very disappointed with Blade Trinity. And not just in a sort of, this is the end of the story kind of thing, but it's I can't tell where it went wrong. I think the first thing that needs to get addressed is the fact that the writer of the past two films, David S. Goyer, who wrote the first two movies, is now directing this one. And that's not a good sign, because I don't know if this is the first movie he ever directed. Regardless, he's a writer, not a director, so he doesn't know or isn't familiar with the styles of how you can shoot an action movie. So I'm just going to say right now that if you're looking for cool Blade action where Blade does his Blade thing like I've been talking about in these reviews for Blade, you're not getting that here. Yes, there are a few segments where Blade does Blade things, but it's shot so horrendously. There are sequences where Blade will punch someone. It starts even at the beginning of the movie. He'll punch someone who's on the roof of his car, but rather than show the guy fully fly off the car like a stunt that pulls him back off the car on a wire, no, we just cut to the guy rolling onto the floor. There's a scene missing. I can't tell if they had these scenes and then they chopped them out so that they could make it seem more actiony or whatever, but it seems like bits of it are missing. And then of course there's the main plot line. So the story is that a bunch of weird group of vampires are digging around in the desert, and they find Dracula. They wake him up, and they're looking for Dracula because they think Dracula is the answer to surviving in the daylight. They can make daywalkers with Dracula's blood. Fun fact, this plot goes nowhere. Seriously, they dig up Dracula, and then they just decide, and they seem to be that's what they want to do. They want to try to use Dracula, I guess, to live out in the sun, because he can go out in the sun and stuff. That's basically all he can do. He can do a couple of cool flips. He can do this weird, stupid morph thing, because they bullshit it that he's got no bones or some crap, so he's able to morph into people, which makes zero sense, and it's used twice in the whole film. And they want to use him, I guess, to get his blood so that they can try to produce daywalkers. But this goes nowhere. There's a mid part of the movie where they find a group of people trapped in I guess coroner bags, and they're draining them out of their blood because they're in comas, so they keep like producing blood. So they basically made like these battery farms that they can keep getting blood from. So you think that like this is like the end game, like their plan is to use Dracula's blood to like turn into daywalkers and then have these human stocks of like already and then kill all the humans. But there's nothing about that, like nothing close, and they don't do anything with Dracula. Trying like there's nothing where they need his blood, or they try to make his blood, or make a cure or something or not a cure, but a thing. Like none of that happens. And then even stupider, there is a boring 30-minute setup where these vampires decide that even though several groups of vampires have found Blade in the past, like in the last movie, and blew up his hideout in the first movie, which means they found him pretty easily, this time they decide to flush Blade out of hiding. They're going to involve the FBI. And for the first time in the series, normal people outside of anyone who's seen a vampire are talking about it. So there's like a talk show thing where the doctor guy, who's the commentator guy from the Pitch Perfect movies, he talks about, and they say the word vampires, and they're like, yeah, they believe. And everyone kind of knows about Blade now. Like, Blade is a figure, which I don't understand how people know who Blade is. They make a very clean point that when Blade kills vampires, they disintegrate. So he doesn't leave behind bodies. So even if people are looking for these people, they would never be able to figure out what happened to them because they've disintegrated. But now apparently Blade is like well known, like they know who he is. And it would have made more sense if like the news guys and everybody were all vampires and that's why they know. But like, why are you talking about it like out in public? And so they send a group of guys to Blade's hideout to blow it up. And fun fact, Whistler dies again. Yeah, they brought him back for the last movie just to kill him off in the first 10 minutes of this movie, which was a big waste. And I don't know, maybe he had another movie he had to go do, so he couldn't stick around. But they come in, and it turns out Blade starts killing them all and realizes that despite the fact that he only kills one of them, and the rest either are still inside the base and they arrest him, he kills one guy. It's a human, and they make it like a big twist, like, we tricked you, we're humans, we're not vampires, and now you're arrested because the cops. And so now you might be thinking, okay, maybe the movie's going to be like, there's an FBI agent who's like the girl from the first movie, the doctor, where she kind of got dragged into the world of vampires, so maybe that's this movie's B plot line, like the FBI guy wants to, get after Blade, but then he realizes vampires are real, and so he has to help Blade, avoid the FBI investigations and stuff. And so I said, okay, that's not a terrible motive for the plot where the FBI is hunting him down. I mean, it's a stupid build up for how it happened, but I mean, I guess the FBI hunting him isn't the worst thing you could do. I mean, maybe him trying to find Dracula and he's got to find him before the FBI get him. But don't worry, it doesn't matter, because immediately as soon as Blade gets into the FBI, the radio guy from Pitch Perfect comes in, drugs him, and basically holds him hostage. But before they can do anything, he's rescued by two new characters played by Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds. And Biel is playing Whistler's daughter. I don't know if she's the daughter that he mentioned. I'm assuming she's not the daughter he mentioned having been killed by the vampire, because she says she was born out of wedlock, so I'm guessing she's just a daughter. But don't worry, there's no scene with her like grieving the fact that her father blew up at the beginning of the movie. There's a brief hint that Whistler is married. You see him playing with his wedding ring at one point, so you kind of figured that's where it was going. But it's revealed pretty early that she is his daughter. But Jessica Biel gets like nothing to do here. Like there's a pretty cool badass scene like where she pretends to be a homeless lady and puts a baby in a carriage, and the vampires try to take it, even though they should very easily tell that it's not a real baby when they start tossing it around. But it's got garlic in it, and then it kills them all with like a bone arrow. It's a pretty cool thing. And then you got Ryan Reynolds, who's basically, there's no easy way to say this, Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Like that's basically what if Ryan Reynolds, I know that he has like, I don't want to say that he's only good at comedic stuff. I mean, he's been in a couple of serious movies where he can be quiet and not exactly loud, but in any movie where he's in a comedy, he tends to pull up the Deadpool-isms. And for anybody who's been born to play a character, Ryan Reynolds was born to play Deadpool. Like there's just certain moments in here where he cracks jokes, way more jokes than the previous two movies, and you can just feel the Deadpool. Like obviously in hindsight it's hard to separate the two. When it came out, obviously he's just there for laughs and giggles and whatnot, but now it's kind of hard to separate the two. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's hard to separate now. And at this point we get introduced to like this new Scooby-Doo crew that involves ironically not many two other people that are kind of well known. Patton Oswalt, the comedian guy from King of Queens, is their like tech support guy, and the chick from Poker Face, who was just in Fantastic Four, she plays the blind Natasha Leone, and she's there, and she plays this blind chick on the team that I don't know how she's. I guess they have the text to speech thing because she always queues up things on the computer, and yet she doesn't have like the text to speech program. So I don't know how she's seeing what she or knows what she's looking at on the computer. And they have like this whole crew, and they make it like a big deal. Like, yeah, they're this thing called the Night Stalkers, and they hunt all the vampires down, and they're a cool team, and they go out and they kill everybody, and they're all set up, and then like not even like 20 minutes later, Dracula just walks casually into their base. They have no barricades, no security, despite the fact that later, when another guy comes into the base afterwards, we see like they have like this turret thing that scans them, and they have to turn it down. So somehow they didn't have any sort of security, and he kills everybody in the facility save for Ryan Reynolds and Natasha Lyonne's daughter, who he takes back to his base for plot convenience so that we can have an ending. And it was just so stupid. Like, I'm supposed to care about the deaths, and they drag it out, like showing like how visceral their deaths are and stuff. Like they're dying on the floor, their necks are all like ripped open and stuff. And it's like, am I supposed to be upset? Like they really hold on to Natasha Lyonne's character, who has said like one line. And these guys are basically introduced because they have figured out a way, or have almost figured out a way, to kill all the vampires, to end them all with this serum. However, they can't get it working because they need a pure strain, and because every vampire who's walking around in modern day is basically a mutation of the original, they need Dracula. So, of course, it's convenient that Dracula is now walking among us. But you notice I haven't really mentioned Dracula a whole lot in my plot summary. Well, the first thing is Dracula's appearance is horribly underwhelming. First off, he's played by, I forget his name, but he's from the Flash TV show. He played the guy who was opposite Captain Cold. I forgot his name, but that's who it is. And he's not a bad actor or anything. I'm not this and that. But he basically walks around like he's in a Giorgio Armani ad. It mostly stays in his human form, and he does nothing all film. There's one scene like where he sees like a Hot Topic store selling Dracula merchandise, and he looks at it, and what should just be like a funny little joke, and that's it, and that's walk off. He murders the two of them for whatever reason, I guess to show that he's evil and whatnot. But then he does like nothing for the rest of the movie until like halfway through, when he decides he's gonna mess with Blade, and they go on a little chase sequence where he picks up a baby and he runs with it, and it basically redoes the scene from the first movie where Deacon had the little girl and was holding her hostage. And it's basically the same thing. They have a chat, and he lets her go, and that's it. And it kind of felt like repetitive. But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't fight Blade until the very end. And his appearance, like I said, is mostly the guy from the actor who's played from The Flash. And when he does transform into his Dracula form, which we see briefly at the beginning in a horrible, seizure-inducing, choppy edit sequence, which is, I think this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. The flashlight falls on the floor, and it starts, going in and out. And so that gives them, the editor, the bright idea that, hey, I'm gonna chop the footage up into seizure clips like it's flashing because the flashlight's flashing, but it's not the light flashing in the scene, it's the scene that's been cut to look like it's flaring out of existence. Like it keeps cutting to a different, like it's going one scene black, one scene black, one scene black, not an actual scene that was shot with a flashing strobe light, which I don't understand why they didn't do that. But then, like I said, when he turns into his Dracula form, he looks like a weird reject of, I guess, the devil-looking creature from the Satan Pit episode of Doctor Who, and a Mortal Kombat reject character. Like, it looked so horrible. And, like, the prosthetics on him are kind of okay. Like, sometimes it's real, but they fight for, like, maybe 5 minutes, and it's over. And it was so underwhelming. I was like, you could have done anything with this. Like, you could have gone comic book Dracula. You could have gone old school, movie Dracula, combined them, done something really cool. Dracula in the comics doesn't necessarily look like, the Dracula that we know from like the movies and stuff. He has a specific design, and yet it seems like they didn't even want to bother looking at it, despite the fact that there is an actual Marvel comic in the movie that Ryan Reynolds hands to Blade at one point to show him that Dracula is a real thing, even though Blade kind of writes it off as, yeah, that's not a real thing. And then even the ending is confusing. So the whole final battle scene to rescue Ryan Reynolds and the little girl is that he needs to stab Dracula with this serum thing so that they can create this bomb that'll essentially wipe out all the vampires. But they're never very clear on like what its range is, and so in the movie it just sort of affects the building they're in, despite the fact that they made it seem like this was the thing to end the war kind of a thing, like this was the end-all be-all motion, and that Blade was either going to die from it or not. And then the ending just kind of gives up. It's like they didn't want to commit to killing all the vampires, and they didn't want to commit to killing Blade, so instead we get the building gets cleared of the vampires, they're all dead, and Blade is unconscious, And then, despite the fact that the FBI shows up finally after the end of the movie, they're not in their whole movie. They just show up at the beginning, and then once he gets kidnapped by Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel, they disappear. And then they show up at the end, and they see Dracula's body on the floor, and they're looking, all staring at it. But then there's another scene where it's Blade's body on the slab, despite the fact that Blade is gone on the floor in this scene. And it morphs into Dracula's body, and Ryan Reynolds' narration says that was Dracula's parting gift to Blade, that they got Blade's body and it morphed into Dracula. But then I heard that there's an alternate ending where the Dracula body was gone and Blade's body was still in the hole, and that body was taken to the morgue, which makes sense, and then it turned into Dracula to let it know that Blade was still alive, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than what's in the theatrical version. So you got me. But yeah, that's it. And then it ends just basically with Ryan Reynolds saying, basically the equivalent of, yeah, you thought the movie was going to end with the vampires getting killed and stuff? Well, tough noogies, we don't know if we're making another one, so the war goes on. And it was like, then why hype this up like it was the final battle or the trilogy was coming to an end or something? Like, either go full balls to the wall and cure the vampires and destroy them all, or don't. But it's like they wanted to do that to kind of hype up a trilogy, but then they also kind of, I guess, felt like, hey, if this is still successful, maybe we can do another one. But as far as I know, there was no talks to do another one. Granted, there's not a lot of time between when this movie came out and the MCU starting, so Blade is kind of, I guess, non-important at that rate, so they kind of skip over it, and they didn't want to do it. I heard there was rumors that they were supposed to cross over with the Kate Beckinsale Underworld movies, but that fell through. And again, like I said, if you didn't see it in the first Blade movie, it totally reeked of where Underworld ripped off everything from, the stylistic, leather-wearing badass who kills supernatural creatures. It took on the rage, and Underworld was probably the biggest thing that came out of that was somewhat successful. It spawned a bunch of movies, so I kind of get it. But this was so underwhelming, and I guess just because Dracula's in it, and I get we're still in like the pre-MCU days of we can't do things comic accurate, and I didn't even mention Ryan Reynolds' character's name. He actually is a character from the comics, so that was kind of cool. I don't know if it's exactly one-to-one what he is in the comics, but he's interesting. He's a previous vampire who's been cured. Because again, that's another thing. Goyer was never clear on what the rules are. Like, that's my biggest problem with all three Blade movies. Like, they were never 100% clear on what exactly is the rules. Like you look at something like, but Supernatural did a really good job with the vampires. Like, they explain, like, they mostly slept during the day, but they could go out. But there was a thing that if they fed within a certain time period of getting bit, it cemented the change. Like, that was the rule there. Like, if you fed within 24 hours in this window, yeah, there was one episode where they BS'd it and they cured Dean when he got turned into one. But other than that, it had rules, and Goyer never really made it abundantly clear what the rules were. Like the girl doctor in the first movie got bit, but then they cured her and her hunger didn't take over. Blade is a half-breed, and he keeps doing different serum actions to hold it in. And they keep hinting that he's going to freak out one day and turn. So I don't know if that was like maybe for a sequel that they never developed, but that never happened. And then there was just like, there was just no like set rule system. So it's like, I don't know, like, if someone gets bit, are they screwed? Are they not screwed? And so with Ryan Reynolds' character, I'm like, well, I guess he got cured, but how did he get cured? Because like, where did he find that cure? Did his Scooby-Doo gang figure it out? Like, I don't know. And that's another thing. Like, the Scooby-Doo gang is a cool idea on paper. Like, giving Blade friends is, I think giving Blade friends is kind of detrimental to the character of Blade because he works alone and that's just how he operates. Like, even his relationship with Whistler is kind of frosty at best. Like, he doesn't view him more than a father figure mentor. I don't know if he would say it's his best friend, but like, they have a work professional relationship. And so to give him this whole crew, it's a bit much. And it's different from the last movie where they gave him a crew, but it was a crew of vampires, so you knew he didn't trust them, and there was all that back and forth, snide comment crap. But now it's like, okay, here's all these human characters, and we want you to care about them. And when they die in 20 minutes, you should feel something. I don't feel anything, because I just met these people, and they've been given, 2 lines of dialogue at best? Like, this was something that needed to be established earlier, like in the first movie. Like, this group should have been from the first movie, been in the second movie, and so these are characters you've been with, and when they die, okay, we've spent time with them, we've done things with them, and you can't just give us a group of characters and make them be played by, well-known actors or celebrities that we've seen in other things and stuff, and hope that, oh yeah, it's all going to be good. And like I said, with Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds, they're kind of like the center of it, like the main two. I mean, they give Biel basically nothing. Like, she's supposed to be like upset over everybody in the group dying, and she's got like this internal issue. And of course, there's an unnecessary scene of her taking a shower and sitting in it. I don't know why it's there, but it's there. And then you've got Ryan Reynolds, who's just there to crack jokes, and occasionally that's it. And then Blade kind of gets lost in it, so it's like he doesn't get a lot of time to do Blade badass things, and when he does, it's kind of weird, and they make him crack a few more jokes than necessary. But I'm not saying like it's a funny movie, but like I don't think that ruins it. It's underwhelming. And you could argue and say, well, the second Blade movie wasn't anything special to write home about, but if you're looking for just, a good gory vampire flick with Blade at the center of it, you can't go wrong with that. But like here, it's like they had all these dominoes that they set up. Like, okay, here's a finale movie that we're going to try to, finish this trilogy off on a high note. We're bringing Dracula into it. There's a thing to cure all the vampires and get rid of them all, and none of these dominoes particularly landed, like, for me. And to me, it's a big disappointment. And from what I've heard, people who were involved in the film, I've heard stories that Wesley Snipes wasn't happy. He didn't like the focus on, like, the other characters, putting Blade to the side. He didn't particularly like it. Goyer said he didn't have a good experience on it. I doubt he did. Again, Goyer is a screenwriter. He's not a director. And when screenwriters jump into the director's chair, as we will see it later on in the MCU going forward, or rather I should say the Fox movies of superhero stuff from Marvel, we're going to see that sometimes the writer becoming the director isn't exactly a good thing. No matter how many movies they've written, no matter how many movies they've been on, they just, I don't know, that's not their forte. It's like you never really see a director go the opposite way and only direct movies and then he starts writing movies. Like, so I don't know, it's weird when you see it the other way. Like, okay, this guy, wrote a bunch of movies and now he's directing a movie. Like, I get actors doing it because, they've been on the sets, they've seen how it all works and stuff. But, like, screenwriters are not on the set all day long. They don't see how movies are made and stuff in that respect. They do their piece and then they go, So I don't really know why they picked Goyer. I guess Guillermo del Toro was busy, so I guess he couldn't come back. They really should have just found a director. I don't know how you couldn't have found someone to do this. But I guess also I should say that this movie was probably influenced, I would say, a little bit by the whole where we were at this point in the Marvel universe of films. You got to remember, at this point we've got two awesome Spider-Man movies. X-Men's been killing it. The Hulk movie didn't do so hot. Daredevil didn't do so hot. But like, there's been this sort of, I want to say, a tonal style with these movies. They haven't gone completely dark like the way the first Blade was, where there was very little humor and it was a sort of gritty film. Then Blade 2, it embraced more of the fun aspects. But now I feel like Blade Trinity was made because, we need to copy things from the other Marvel movies that have been successful. So Spider-Man has, funny side characters that make the audience laugh. So boom, Ryan Reynolds is brought in. Okay, we need females to bring in the female audience because maybe they don't like just watching Blade, kill everything and it's basically a dude fest. There's one chick. Or she's a vampire and she doesn't do anything. So, okay, here's Jessica Biel. More women know who she is. She was on a popular television show for how many seasons? So it's fun for the whole family kind of a thing. And I think that's what kind of hurt this. Like, they just made a couple of dumb decisions and it was kind of sad. I was disappointed. After reading that little blurb, I was excited. I thought it was going to be really good. I'd heard this one was kind of so I wasn't, like, 100% happy with jumping into it, but I was kind of excited when it said Dracula was in it because I did not know that. But just the treatment of him it just hurt me. That was bad, and the whole ending, and it basically it doesn't. We kind of start where we end where we started, basically. Where, okay, Dracula's dead, Blade's out there. There's nothing to do with this cure. I mean, are they going to use it? Are they going to take it somewhere? Are they going to go city by city? Are they going to go after the blood farm thing? Like, there were just a lot of questions where I feel like Goyer just wanted to write it, finish it, and it would be someone else's problem if they made a fourth one. But they never did. And there was never any rumors about a fourth movie from what I've heard. And I don't know if maybe that's after, because Wesley Snipes stopped doing like a lot of movies after Blade, but like, it just never happened. So, yeah, Blade Trinity. So should you watch it? I'm going to say, okay, I say this. If you liked Blade 1 and you really liked Blade 2, then you have to set your expectations up for what a disappointment this one's going to be, or at least like lower the expectations for the bar. Like, it's not as good as 2. So I'd say it's 2, 1, and then Trinity in terms of what I would rank them, in terms of what I thought was interesting. Just not good. 2 is the highlight by far. It's got great choreographed action scenes. It's got a simple plot, but it's fun. It's easy to follow. It's cool. It's well shot. This is just, there's too many mistakes here. There's just too many miscues. So watch it, I guess, if you made it to Blade 2 and you enjoyed those two movies. you should probably just finish it, just to finish it and see how they, screwed the pooch. But honestly, you could probably skip this. It wouldn't hurt you. Like I said, it ends pretty much the same spot where we started, so you're not really missing anything. And again, there's nothing after this, so you're not hurting anybody if you don't finish it. It's not like it's answering the dire, hard questions of the original, like anything that was like, this wasn't like a movie, one question got answered here or something came back full circle. It just felt like they repeated a lot of things from the other two movies, and it felt like the trick was done at this point, and they just couldn't come up with interesting things. It's poorly shot. It's got a bunch of storylines that don't really go anywhere. It's like they had all these ideas, like, oh, it would be cool if the FBI was after Blade. Oh, but it would also be cool if Dracula was in it. Oh, it would also be cool if there was like a final war between the vampires and the humans, and it was the end of days kind of thing. I don't know. So again, it's up to you whether you want to, I guess, finish it if you want to finish it. But personally, you could skip it if I were you. It's not really worth watching. All right, thanks guys for listening, and I will see you guys on the next review.